is an amazing edition of editorials. We are broadcasting from Canada and I welcome you to it. My name is Sandra Asante. Today we'll be delving into the taste of history, the long history in short about Ethiopia, as well as Ethiopia deserving a future they can be proud of. So don't go nowhere. I'll be back after the break. You're welcome back from the break. Thank you so much for tuning in. The historian here brought about 6 brave nations in the world. Well, let me add to it something he didn't include briefly. The people who invaded Africa are as follows. 1. Habesha, today's Tigrayan people, Tigray and Amhara are from Asia, exactly from Mesopotamia, today's Iraq, where civilization and written language were flourishing about 5,000 years ago. Then, because of the political unstable situations created by then powerful Alexander the Great and ethnic strife against the inhabitants of that part of the world, namely Persians, Babylonians, Assyrians, Medicine, etc., that today's Habesha were pushed out and therefore immigrated to Yemen, to Habeshat. From this city they got their name. Habesha, as Romans got their name from eternal city of Rome. The Habesha therefore invaded East Africa by taking over the African civilization already flourishing from Kemet, present Egypt, to present-day Somalia, and in between before and after Christ, and continued till the fall of Axume's kingdom, and today the Tigrayans are the main inhabitants of Axum and beyond. And now they are even fighting over it by decisively winning over Abis, Isaias, Amharas, and President Famagio's forces. Unbelievable indeed. Now let's look at the second group in Europeans who invaded Africa 600 years ago today are inventing the guns and therefore by becoming the most powerful people on planet Earth till our days. And Europeans divided Africa into tiny nation states, from territorial states for themselves in Berlin in 1984 to 1985. The third group who invaded Africa were Arabs from Arabian Peninsula in 640 AD, relatively yesterday, by occupying the entire North Africa and by assimizing the natives, and the rest by expelling to Central, Western and Eastern Africa. Now to Tigrayans, one of the Habesha people in today's Tigray and Eritrea, with their language Tigrina that came in existence about 600 years from Ge'ez, Amharic about 400 years ago. It's actually the newest from Tigrayan and Tigray. And the Tigray language, the oldest and the closest to Ge'ez. As a matter of fact, if you speak Tigray, you literally know and could speak Ge'ez even now as we speak. But you want to tell me, right, the truth. Well, the other side of Habesha, the Amharic and Tigrina speakers shamefully discriminated the Tigray speakers simply because they are Muslims. And guess what? Before becoming Muslims, Tigray speakers were all Christians, too, with typical Christianized Jewish names like Samuel, Raphael, Daniel, etc., etc. And the sour truth is whether Christianity or Islam are both imported religions, dividing us and therefore our country into 2 worlds. Muslims versus Christians discriminating among nationals and sometimes verbal fighting on and for nobody's imported religions, philosophies and mindset, and stupid as I guess so. Now, let's move on to Ethiopian deserving a future they can be proud of. Ethiopians constantly tell me how much they detest being seen as conflict and famine-ridden country. Part of the nation, together with Eritrea, once made up a kingdom of Axum, which has been described as one of the 4 greatest civilizations of the ancient world. Ethiopia has a written language and coinage dating back nearly 2,000 years. Its history is full of glory, heroism, and victories against foreign invaders. It is also the only country in Africa that has never been colonized. In 1963, the capital, Addis Ababa, was chosen as the headquarters of the Organization of African Unity, today's African Union. Ethiopia hosts the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa and is an international hub. The palpable pride Ethiopians have in their past transcends different ethnic backgrounds. Indeed, the country's heritage of independence is a source of great esteem for many Africans, including those in the diaspora. My great-grandmother of Ethiopian thought my family Sudanese, orphaned during a raid on Ethiopian-Sudanese border. She was adopted by an Egyptian merchant. My mother recalls her concerns during the Second World War when Ethiopia was occupied by Italians. Unable to read Arabic, she would ask her grandchildren to scan the newspapers and update her about Ethiopians' resistance effort. Ethiopia's descent today into a spiral of conflict and suffering in the northern Tigray state make depressing reading. 5 million people need emergency assistance, with 400,000 at risk of starvation. Thousands have been killed, nearly 2 million displaced, and accounts of severe human rights abuses are widespread. The conflict between the government and the Tigray People's Liberation Front, which began last November, was initially described by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed as a lawful enforcement operation after an attack on the Federal Army. We don't know how true that is, but the war has since led to numerous accusations and counter-accusations. Federal forces recently withdrew from Mekelle, the Tigrayan capital, leaving it once again in the hands of the TPLF. Their conditions for a ceasefire suggest they may have been heading towards independence as their ultimate goal. Last week, the UN Security Council held its first open session on the crisis, calling on all sides to commit to an indefinite ceasefire and allow humanitarian access to the region. This was critical and long overdue but the international community must also focus on the wider challenges in Ethiopia, namely that there are several other opposition forces which could be radicalized. The Tigrayan account for 6% of Ethiopians, 112 million people. Instrumental in ousting the dictator Mengistu in 1991, they subsequently dominated the coalition government for nearly 30 years. But the Oromo, who make up 35% of the population, also have a centuries-long conflict with the central government. If not dealt with promptly, this too could provoke the disintegration of Ethiopia. Among the Amhara, who account for 27% of the population, factions and militias blame the government for intensifying oppression and are growing extreme restless. Abiy has so far failed to put a lid on any of these tensions. The twice delayed elections to choose 547 federal parliament members have either been boycotted or postponed in part of Oromia and Amhara and put off indefinitely in Tigray. In recent comments that Ethiopia needs peace to develop provide a glimmer of hope as the international community consider how to respond to the tragedy in Tigray. It should also apply pressure on each of Ethiopia's warring parties in order to get them to come to the table. It must be made clear that there can be no military solution to the country's challenges. Sadly, Ethiopia is once again becoming anonymously with war and suffering. Its people need present and future of which they can be as proud as they are of their past. I wonder what my grandmother would think if she could see the conflict raging in her country today. It's not between Ethiopia and their would-be European subjugators, but between her own compatriots. This is where I draw the curtains. Thank you so much for always tuning in. My name is Sandra Asante. I'll see you some other time.